provide a presentation of options along with Collier, who's our owner's project manager. I want to thank, I see Town Council President Carney, Town Council President Samantha Wilcox, Linda Lyle, School Committee, Craig Lazan, School Committee, thank you all for coming. So this is our second road show, and our opportunity is really to make sure that, one, that the public understand that I promise this is not Juniper cards, you're gonna get a new building. This is, the state law changed in 2018, changing the way we had to finance school construction as well as reimbursement and how you fix school buildings. So when that law changed, it was required by the General Assembly to make sure that every 5 years the General Assembly went out to review its school facilities statewide, and then in turn, every 5 years, districts had to do an in-depth study called Stage 1, which is what we completed last February. Stage 1 means you have to have a deep review with architects and owners, project managers, to make sure that you can review the needs of your facility and provide all the concerns that need to be addressed. That's Stage 1. Stage 2 is what we're in right now. That's how are you going to fix this? What's the solution to make sure you're bringing your schools up to the 21st century standards per the law? So that's why when people say, well, just Band-Aid it, like, put $1 million in it, you can borrow dollars. We can, but if we won't get reimbursed, so it means we're paying dollar for dollar instead of getting 65% on the dollar. So I don't know about you, if someone said I would rather pay the whole dollar, or you could pay, and I only have to pay 65 cents, and you pay just that small amount, I'm going the smallest amount possible. But that's where I think is, there is no choice when there's no, I don't want to do anything, I don't like any options. Because what's going to happen is, and this is what has been happening, right now, since I've been here, and this is year 6, every time we go to do this with the architects and the OPMs, while they're lovely people, I do not want to keep giving them money to be able to do Stage 1 and Stage 2 required by the law. So it's not, I want the architect. The law says you must have an architect and an OPM. So I would rather, the money that I'm spending, the millions of dollars we've spent on architects and owners project management, needs to be in our facilities. So we keep coming back to, like, everybody, no one's going to be completely happy, and I get that. So tonight, really what we want you to do is just sort of keep yourself neutral. Try not to stay on one side. I was really pleasantly surprised at Richmond when parents said to me, I came in hating one option and left thinking, wow, that may be an option that I actually like. So just be open-minded. Please ask questions. So it's really important that we have accurate facts put out there, because I think that sometimes is where we're really sort of getting discontent out there, and it's not necessarily factual. So a few of the things, I already talked about the 5 years. Well, I will say, per the law, and that once you in the regulations, after 50 years, a school has reached its life. Now, you can renovate, you can do that. Richmond is 90 years old, so it's almost 2 school lives. Then you have Charlestown, not much further behind, on 78, and then Ashway just below that. But once it hits 50, and this is not about what you would do at your house, right? How we have to operate a school, it comes with laws, it comes with restrictions, it comes with regulations. So if you go on the RIDE website, you're going to be able to see that right now we have classrooms at 500 square feet on average. But we need 900 square feet per the law. So right now, all of the bonuses that we had access to last time, they don't exist, but the law still exists. So we still now have to go back out and try to see how if we can get more community input so that we do have a successful elementary facilities plan. And I went back to 1975. There has not been any work done in your elementary facilities at a large extent. And every time the main campus comes up, people tend to do that. And I'm living that firsthand, where we put out the bond together. We decided to only do $15 million in projects on the main campus. The main campus does need more. If you went back and you look at the Jacobs assessment, you can see some of that work. Now, the Jacobs assessment, people, again, this was confusion last time. It is the General Assembly's report about overarching school needs. It has no basis for classrooms. So when you look at that report, it has nothing to do with classrooms. They're just looking at your infrastructure over the next 5 years. This General Assembly now is, they're waiting on what they call the Bureau Veritas report. It's the 5-year review for them. It's not out yet. People keep saying, well, how do we do this without that report? We don't need it. Like I told you, that report is the General Assembly's to give big picture, and what you're getting from SLAM and from Colliers is a deep dive into our facilities so that we understand our infrastructure needs. So overall, our opportunity still remains at 61%, and that's on the state website. So if you want to know, how do you know that 61%? Is this guaranteed? Yes, these are dollars that are guaranteed. We started with the school committee. The school committee reviewed the presentation. We did our first roadshow on Monday. This was the second one. And I hope that you will provide Slim with the opportunity to see the options. These are not the designs of the schools that we will get. They have to give you examples with renderings to say, this is how you could solve the solution. So don't get caught up on where a room is, what grade is where, what color the buildings are. That is all can be decided in stage 3.
My name is Mark Rhodes. I'm a design principal with SLAM. I've got 33 years in the educational marketplace, scattered all across the country, so it's good to be in Rhode Island, where I actually started my career way back in 1992. That's a long time ago for me. But Kathy Elthorpe is with me, another partner in my practice. We've got Collier's here as well, but that is signing it back. Look. What we're going to go through are options that we've been asked to study. And as Gina said, these aren't the ultimate solutions. This is about master planning and setting the stage for your success with the state and with stage 3 is when these actually get implemented by an architectural design team. It's been kind of a whirlwind exercise for us since we've been hired, but we know you well. We were here a couple of years ago working through some studies then, so we know the buildings. We had deep dives into the buildings back then in that stage too. Obviously things have changed in a couple of years. We are looking at some different things. We're working towards October 21st, getting in front of the school committee again and getting them to have a dialogue and listen to everything that they're hearing in these sessions. These are important. You can't hurt my feelings with anything you say. My feelings were hurt a long time ago in this profession, so I've got thick skin. We just want to have a good dialogue about the opportunities. We've been asked to study 3 different scenarios for you all. Gina kind of talked about stage 1, stage 2. Stage 3 is really about the completion of the design, and stage 4, which is often forgotten about, is sort of the project closeout. The key thing in stage 4 is you want to hit a June cycle so you get reimbursed for in that year. If you miss that June date, you have to wait a year to get reimbursed, and that can be very painful. Well, I'll go through in no particular order or ranking. Option 1 is a unified school where we look at pre-K through 4, where everything is on one site. I will say with that option, no site has been chosen. We are studying sites with your team across your district. So we are looking at those. We actually have some site tours scheduled for Monday. We're going to look at various options. We don't know where it's going to go. I will tell you it's not on the main campus. It's not impacting your fields there. It's not impacting circulation. It's not adding to any chaos that's already there. So that I can say for sure. We also, I know 5th grade has come up in a discussion. There are opportunities to look at bringing 5th grade in to stage 2 potentially. If you do that, it could free up some space for CTE programs, and the middle school also brings CTE programs to the elementary school, which is RIDE is really starting to push in a big way, which makes a lot of sense, just exposing kids to different things early. I decided I wanted to be an architect in 2nd grade because my teacher brought in her friend who was an architect. So exposing children at that age to different opportunities could help create lifelong decisions. Option 2, renovations, additions. We've looked at the existing facilities, which are extremely well maintained, just old and small compared to, I'll say most of them. Look, I saw the eye roll. But mostly very well maintained compared to what we see in other districts, right? But they are small compared to what we would see of modern school. RIDE regulations require us to do certain things. I'll get into that in a little bit. But we have studied all 3 sites, and the last option is updating 3 new schools that we studied previously a year and a half ago or so. We've updated some cost figures and programmatic sort of things there.
I just want to jump in because there was some confusion, so I'm trying to make sure the confusion doesn't linger based on some feedback that we received on Monday. So one was, why these options? Why not two? And yes, the school committee contracted to review these three options. And the reason why it came to the floor yesterday was you can do two, because it's a formula base. Now, these renderings don't do that, but like Mark said, stage 3 is when you're actually designing. So the more examples we can hear from the community of like why this or not that. So pure transparency. Option 1 was the original plan when I first arrived. It never came to fruition because, as you all know, COVID hit. People were not really ready to have this conversation. It was a lot going on. It felt rushed. The school committee, removed the plan to go to reset. And there was just not enough community support around One Unified. Option 2 was added this time because we heard even school committee members say, I'm not voting for any option until I know what renovations and additions are going to cost. So if that was the reason why people didn't want to pass the last bond, we wanted to make sure that we absolutely doubled down and got that information to people. And then the last option is because we've already done it with SLAM, and we were like, can we have it almost like buy two and get one free? That kind of thing. So we got one free. Because we've already put it out there, and it doesn't have to be this design, but that was some of the confusion last time. Option 1, 2, and 3 is what SLAM right now is giving you costs around and opportunities to talk about. But if you want to think about, for example, a unified school that has a lower and upper elementary that actually has 2 buildings, what I can tell you is, I do talk nationally. People suggest you have those weather kinds of tunnels or the hallways that lead, because Westerly did the beautiful option. It's a beautiful campus. I don't know about you, but the wind down here is pretty intense. And in Westerly, when the kids get that hurricane wind and it's torrential rain, nobody wants to be in class all day soaking wet. So while it's a beautiful design, with our weather, it's probably better that the buildings connect. So you can actually think about the One Unified School like EWG has, the junior and the high. So those are some of the examples on Monday night that may help you realize that when we say unified, it's not necessarily one gigantic building. It could be the campus of early childhood and upper elementary.
Yes, I will explain that a little bit more in detail, because to do the efficiency of a unified school, mechanical systems, sharing support services, one loading document, things like that, but we'll get into that. What I will say about all 3 of these opportunities, we continued with the ed spec that we started to develop 2 years ago. We updated that. In the rest of stage 2, so after October 21st, once a selection is made, there will be more dialogue around the ed spec. Any option that we're showing could deliver a remarkable ed spec in the way you teach your children and the way you administrate within a community. I'm not that worried about that. Renovate to do is a little harder, I'll be honest. The sites are small, they're single-story buildings, so it's hard to bank big additions there, but we'll show some options. But we wanted to keep an apples-to-apples comparison to give you all the best chance to have a fair dialogue around what the communities want to move forward. Again, the upper grades on the main campus remain unchanged. As I mentioned, parity across the district is very important. We've looked at, NESDEC is a service that the state requires us to use to look at projections for a number of school-age kids, and we'll say the age range from pre-K to 4th grade here. That's kind of what we were asked to study. We looked at that. We have to look 5 years out in those projections, right? So 5 years out, they go 10 years out, but we look 5 years out. 5 years out, there is a new study coming that we'll get in December, likely. They're usually dated December of the year, so December 25. We will update for that as soon as we get it. But what we have right now is 1,281 students. We know your current census is 1,077. So we know there's a difference between the two. But the way to think about this is that money is formulaic. Money comes from the number of students based on a NESDEC formula. So we take the number of students, that 1,281, multiply that by a preset square foot per student that RIDE tells us based on school size. Then we get to multiply that school size by $1 per square foot. And that's how the money is. So what we're trying to do is maximize the amount of dollars that you have, regardless of the scheme you choose, the options you look at, to make sure you have the best ability to spend that money wisely and get the biggest reimbursement on that. So stage 2 is a formula-driven exercise. And it's very important. We have to write that, we have to prove that to RIDE. We got to meet with them probably early November. But what we're trying to do is set the table for financial success, right? So this is a lot about looking at financial modeling and different options that you get have discussion and choose. Option 1. So when we look at, again, there's no site to drop this on, so we just drop that on a blank slide. There are some interesting thoughts, as Gina talked about, when you think about a building of this size, 1,281 students, which was what we were designed to. You likely would have an early childhood center connected to an elementary school, say maybe pre-K through first grade, connected to second through fourth or fifth if you wish to have that there. They would be connected likely through some level of central services, shared gyms, 2 gyms, 1 gym. That would have to be studied, working with RIDE and their regulations. You would want to sort of minimize the amount of kitchens. When you think about a unified school, even if it's 2 buildings connected by some central support services, you have less boilers, less air handlers, less roof, less windows, less walls to deal with versus 3 independent schools no matter which way you go. That's just the efficiency that you have, right? There are other considerations, busing's a consideration, all those types of things would have to be worked out, obviously. But it does give you the most robust opportunity to get your kids acclimated and exposed to the different thematic things that you have. I'm not going to get it right, but I know one is based on outside, one is STEM, and the other is health and wellness. So right now, it's hard for those children that may be in Charlestown or Richmond or Ashway to have access to each one of those thematic areas because they may not be in their school. In a unified school, you have the opportunity that child could be exposed to whatever they wanted to be, whatever you thought was best, because they would all be within. It would still be organized thematically, so you'd have that same kind of thing. You tend to break these schools down into community sections, so it's not, everybody's not in a massive school like in New York City. They're little community-based hubs that are connected through a common infrastructure. So that's kind of a unique proposition. You also get the benefit of more field space, more community space. There was a question asked on Monday, what happens to the existing schools? You all own them, so that's up to you to decide what you wish to do with those. There's lots of things. The community where I come from, it was turned into a senior center. So there are lots of different things you can do with those buildings if you choose an option like this. We have to go through and lay it out. It looks way more designed than it actually is, as Gina mentioned, but RIDE looks for proof of concept. Can you organize on a site, which is about 23 to 30 acres, a building of this footprint with the distinct early childhood would be closest to me on the left, elementary school sort of lower right, in this case grades 1 through 4, pre-KK, CALA, inclusive classrooms, those type of things, that sort of separate entrance. Right now, the gym, 2 cafeterias, the gym is larger than a standard elementary size school gym just because of this number of children in the building, so you have to make it a little bit bigger. Yes. Yeah. You drop it down, so you have to. Yeah. That's pretty standard. It's organized over a central spine. Architecturally, this is called a finger scheme that allows ease of access of coming in and organizing grades, whether grades 1 and 2 are paired, 3 and 4, or you want to do it differently or mix them up. You have that ability to do whatever you want. The other thing is you have the scalability, right? So I know right now within the district there are more second graders. So you have the ability to take some classrooms for that if you have less first or less third and sort of make that work. I'm going to show what it could look like. As Gina said, you guys on tomatoes. Yes?
I have a question. Where is the integrated preschool? That's for special needs kids?
That's within.
And the special needs things like speech and OT and PT and the school psychologist.
That's all just, so the ladder is distributed throughout the facility, right? So in a facility like this with community hubs, you tend to not want to move the children, you want to move the adult. Mm-hmm. So you provide those breakout spaces, compound rooms is what we're calling that, scattered throughout the facility, so if I'm providing that service, I can go do that. So I'm not pulling a child 400 feet away to a location. What you mentioned in the first question, the inclusive classrooms, all that happens within the left-hand side of the plan that you're looking at. It's a separate, basically a separate building connected. So it's an early childhood center, because even play for pre-K is protected, right? We have to fence them in. It's legislated 75 net square feet per child in an age range. So that, we have to sort of encapsulate all of that. So that's easy enough to keep that separate. But they could come together and use a gym, they could use the cafeteria, potentially. Yes.
Will you have the destination determined before they decide what they want to do?
Site, you mean, location? So,
Well, we have to have the meeting in October
Yeah.
to know what they want to do, and then we do the site.
yeah,
Well, because I think a factor is like you're putting kindergartners on the bus already for 45 minutes to an hour is too long. My kid falls asleep on the bus. So now you're talking at this location, depending on where it is, if my kindergartner is going to be on the bus and this location's past where the high school is, and now he's going to be on the bus for a good 70, 80 minutes.
That's a great question, because that's policy, not, so that's something that the school committee controls. So if the school committee says, you know what, if we do this route, instead of, doing 45 minutes to an hour, we want pre-K through 3 to be no more than 30 minutes. That's up to the school committee. That's created by, that's not necessarily district to district. Some go by miles, some say, you can't be more than, a mile away. Here, everybody's more than a mile away, so then.
No, I understand that, but you don't think that's a factor that's gonna play into what people wanna choose? Like, I'm not gonna wanna choose this if I don't know where the site is
Oh,
going
the
to be.
site is, right now is in Richmond. The sites that we're all looking at are in Richmond.
So like, if I were in Charlestown, personally, I'm just speaking like I'm not gonna choose something like this because that's ridiculous long. They already won't do anything about how long your children are on the bus now.
Based on where we have in Charlestown it's from Charlestown School to the main campus. The main campus is really central to Charahoe, if you look at the map as
Correct.
a whole. So the
But they're
land
in
is
fifth
close to the
grade.
campus, but not next to the campus.
But they're in 5th grade then. That's a completely different than a kindergartner that's in Charlestown driving to Richmond
So-
and being in school all day.
So, well, hold on, because remember, we're a regional district, so we don't operate like a town. So, in a regional district, even if you live in Hopkinton and Richmond, you can go to Charlestown, because we're doing now the school closest to your home. So, everyone is designed closest to home. If you have a unified school, then you want to have a centralized location, where regardless of where that transportation is, so to ensure that you don't have a 45-minute bus ride, you
But
route the
that's
kids.
impossible in this location is what I'm saying. So we're proposing this great idea of a unified school, but you can't.
It's not impossible, but maybe that, I'm not understanding the question.
The bigger factor.
Well, you can't, because
So
my
please don't
kid's on the
interrupt
bus
us.
already.
You also have to consider how much everything's gonna cost, but that also has to be factored in.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, only because this isn't informal, we have a presentation, so if the questions could just be directed to the presenter so that we can make sure everyone can hear. Thank you. So, maybe I'm not understanding the
I don't
question.
think you are, but that's okay.
No, because this is,
No, I was just saying, like, what I'm trying to say is we're trying to pick a school that best fits our community. Right? And so a school like this, I understand the factor of the bus has nothing to do with this, but it has to do with the parents that are sending their children to this school. And I think that this unified school that is that far away because of how big our districts are, I feel like this isn't even a plausible option. Like, how are you gonna put kindergartners on a bus that live in Charlestown to go all the way into Richmond at this unified school?
but we do that now.
Not when you live by.
Yes,
the
because we have
waterfall.
students in alternative learning classrooms that are transported.
Okay, but that's their parents' choice,
No,
that's
it
not
isn't.
everybody.
Programmatic. So it's programmatic, which means that right now in Charahoe, you have students, and many of you may have, when you were in school, they were called self-contained classrooms, special education classrooms. You have students who need certain programs, like the clinical day program at Cala. So if they live in Richmond or they live in Charlestown, we bus them to Ashland. We do that already. But that's the point. Right now, all of the supports are not necessarily creative parity, they're not equal. So you could literally go into Ashway, you have no auditorium and no separate cafeteria, you have just one. So right now, all of our schools are, and again, it was because it was regional, right? They all gave up sort of their town control and say, it's too much money by doing it regional, they get 61%, there's more reimbursement, so the state made it, palatable for people to think about regional organizations. So right now what's happening is anytime, and this is what, what breaks my heart, is if a family wants to be the school closest to their home, but they can't because that's not where the program lives. And so we're already doing exactly what you said to many of our students.
So, I think the follow-up would be, how can you guarantee that the children will not be on the bus for more than?
School committee
40
policy,
minutes?
you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Hold on, 1. I know, we're gonna. 5.
It's not possible.
To answer this, we've already established precedent on timing of bus runs with the high school and middle school. So if it's in the same vicinity of that, or the middle school and high school, the run should be very similar to that.
So right now, when Charlestown has pre-K, I'm sorry, I apologize, but so right now, our pre-K students, we have 100 pre-K students that all come to Charlestown. But they don't all live in Charlestown. They live in Hopkinton and Richmond and Charlestown. So they have smaller short rides because they don't have as many kids.
We pay for pre-K, so that's kind of.
No, you don't.
I pay for pre-K.
If you're a community peer, you pay. But if you have a child that's age 3 through 5 that has an IP, the district pays.
Only if they have 2 qualifying things.
If they're not getting walk-in services, or if they don't have an IP that qualifies, we have 100 pre-K students.
Okay, but I'm not
65 of
talking
them.
about, I'm talking about it as a whole. See, like, you're going off to about who these certain things are, that's not.
Well, what I'm saying is our pre-K students, their rides are shorter because of their age. That's already.
And they're also going, they have, 3 people on the bus. So yeah, they go from their house directly there, so you're right, so they'll make it in less than 45 minutes.
Right, and I'm not trying to be argumentative, I'm trying to explain to you that you could even, again, this all comes with money, but you have 70 kids on a bus, you only put 45.
But they won't even change them now and on the bus for a full hour just to flip the route. That's all you have to do, so the first person on is not on an hour going way.
That's a different, that topic
But
is different.
but
than
I'm
this.
saying, so
sorry.
how are you gonna tell us that they're gonna do this and something like that? Like, how are we supposed to trust what you're telling us when you can't even do simple like things now? That's all I'm trying to say.
You would need, then you would need more
That's
buses.
that, but I'll tell, Sheree.
I'm sorry, 1 second, we're gonna let Mark, let's do
No, I had
more
to do with the
slides so that we
student
can talk
count.
about the
I had to do
presentation.
with the
Because
student count.
this conversation is really for the school committee, I don't have that authority.
This is about the student count.
I'm
on
Goldie, can you please
2024.
hold, we're gonna, no more questions right now, we're gonna go back to the.
Okay,
There'll be plenty of time, I'm not going anywhere.
what?
Let me get through, because I think some of the questions might will get answered, may field some more questions, right? So we're here to take those questions, let me get through this, and then we'll get into the question and answer and discussion. Again, the other thing we're trying to do is stay within 2 stories within your district, your communities. We could go 3 stories like we have in many other districts, but it feels like 2 stories is about right, when you think about it. It does give us some opportunities where different grade ranges can be within the facility. So any of the schemes you see, we tend to drive towards 2-story options, especially the renovation additions, because it's all single story, like this school, it has multiple ramps and things. It spreads out, we try to bring them a little bit together, and try to get some staff to use the site more efficiently. When we look at option 2, which is additions and renovations, I'll go school by school, site by site. As we look at Ashaway, which is an interesting little school, it's effectively almost like what I consider a 2-track school. What we're trying to do is create parity across the district, so we're spreading those numbers of students around to create more equality in student counts amongst the schools, so the services could be delivered in a similar manner, in addition to renovation. What you're seeing in the red box is a single-story element. The sites are kind of tight, so I have to knock something down to create some room to expand the school. As Gina mentioned, a lot of the facilities have a shared gym and cafeteria. That is just a nightmare for maintenance, them to try to set up and break down community events, things like that. We can RIDE does not prefer those if we could do away with that. So we're also trying to take the ed spec and apply it to these facilities so we have parity. So things like expanded learning opportunities, what we call Da Vinci spaces, which are open spaces where students can come together and have STEM or art or different curriculum pulled out from the classroom where the teachers have options, where they can teach, they can do all sorts of different things. As we look at the site, if we knock down the red box, we clear up the front yard, and we're looking at a couple-story addition in the front, where we have bus drop-off, parent drop-off. We try to keep the two separate and never let them cross for obvious reasons, but the sites are tight, so there are some idiosyncrasies that would have to be studied further. And again, this was done fairly quickly, but the ed spec we think is okay within here. It's not great. There are some significant compromises with services as you look at the buildings in particular detail. And the bus drop-off and parent drop-off is not awesome because they're within the same loop. But that's just, the site is the site. Looks like there's lots of land available on some of these sites, but some are cliffs, like behind here, there's a mountain. There's a lot of ledge and other things that get in the way. When we look at this floor plan, I should have mentioned before, the idea of security and safety is very important. The way you enter a school in a modern way is not what it used to be. It's not certainly what's designed here today. You do the best you can with what you got. We tend to harden the front doors. When I say harden, that's ballistic glazing, ballistic drywall, it's Kevlar backed. There's lots of security features, cameras buzz in. So if I'm coming to visit as a vendor for the day, I have a process I follow. I check in. I can't get into the school until I get into the lobby space. I can't get, once I get to the vestibule, I have to go into a lobby, escorted or directed to go to someplace. It's just different. RIDE is very, very stringent on these discussions. Even in stage 2, security measures are really important to them. So we have administration, media center, in this case, gymnasium, a platform kind of like here, a little bigger than this, accessible with a ramp to get to it. The idea is these become community spaces or community buildings. So after hours, you want to be able to use these for, whether that's a rec basketball game or some type of community event. We want to be able to close down the rest of the school. Think of voting. If you're doing voting, we want to be able to lock the classrooms down and allow people to come in and vote in a safe manner without interrupting what's going on in the school. Those are the types of things we have to think about, but these facilities are community centers as well as educational facilities. Second floor, more classrooms, the distribution of support spaces for different learning modes, different support mechanisms are scattered throughout the facility. Again, RIDE does not like to see them concentrated anymore. They like to see them dispersed. So it's more where the children are. Just a quick image of what it could look like. The buses have minutes to turn around and come back. That's kind of the weirdness of this site. The buses have to go in, turn around, come back. The drop off is where the drop off is on the right. As we look at Charlestown, where we are, it's an interesting building with a lot of interesting things going on. The site's very tight. There's a lot of topography. You've got the lower field, you've got the upper back 40, which is the hill in the back that's wooded. It's a single-story building. When we look to add a significant amount of space, we have to add pre-K to this, so there's 6 pre-K classrooms. As Gina mentioned before, RIDE regulations are 900 square feet per classroom, for grades 1 through 4 or 5 included. It actually goes all the way up through high school level. Pre-K is about 1,000, kindergarten's 1,000, because you have to have a separate bathroom within that. So they tend to be bigger spaces and with less children in there. So if I think within your district, 25 students is max based on teacher contract that in the classroom, grades 1 through 4, rough number. Pre-K is less, it's like 21. Just because you need to have more space within those classrooms to be able to move the children around the types of activities that they have to go through in their day to day. So when I look at this site, the unfortunate thing, the red box is a little bigger here. I have to take down more building to create more footprint area so I can build back. And what we do is the light gray portion up to the top of the screen is, once we take down that construction, we add back new construction. We increase the footprint. Again, we're utilizing a ton of the site to make this happen. Obviously, parking gets stretched, more teachers, more students, equals more parking on site, so we have to make that work, those accommodations. Work with the parent drop-off, bus drop-off, things like shipping and receiving, getting stuff to a kitchen is important, and how that happens on a day-to-day basis. You're stuck with what you have today, we have to idealize it, even in a renovation addition. As RIDE looks at it, they make us make it. Their words are renovate to new. When you look at a facility that we've renovated, they consider it new resets for 50 years. That's the mandate. As we look at the planning, again, not too dissimilar from other scenes. You tend to have a more community-based side, which puts the gym, the cafeteria, the platform, the media center potentially, the administrative spaces, that secure vestibule entry sequence on one side of the building, being able to lock down the building on the other side. So the wing that's in the middle that comes down towards the screen is the pre-K kindergarten wing. So that's 9 classrooms total, 6 pre-K, 3 kindergarten. Then we run the grades around the pink spaces, I should have mentioned before, both on the lower middle part and the upper right-hand corner. Our learning commons, expanded learning spaces, so that's the opportunity to bring students out of the classroom into different activities for their learning, whether that parent teaching, team teaching. You could mix first and second graders for different events. It just gives you a lot of opportunity. That brings students together for a reading day. You can bring a lot of, like in Pawtucket, the teachers have really worked with a media specialist, and for that week of teaching, say they're going to do astronomy, they bring in all the books based on astronomy, and they kind of scatter it around and they create activities within that space outside the classroom. Just getting your students outside of the classroom into another environment where they can work together is a whole different exercise that you can't do today in facilities that you have. Again, changing the character of the buildings, still trying to respect some of the architecture. It won't look like this at the end. This is just something that allows us to get a budget and to prove to RIDE that it can work. Prove to ourselves too that it can work. You look at Richmond, where we were on Monday. Richmond is a very unique building, has this historic component in the front, which I wish it didn't, because that creates a nightmare of problems for us. Because that is a split level entry, think of like a split level house. You enter and you're faced with stairs right away. If I'm in a wheelchair, or I'm injured and I'm on crutches, if I'm a teacher, a visitor, or a student, it's almost impossible for me to get around in a timed manner. Lack of elevators, this building sprawls across the campus, and it's on so many different levels with steps and ramps. It's just a nightmare. And the way I look at this building, when we design modern schools, we tend to compress the footprints and kind of create more efficient use of space, which means that you have less wall to heat. You still have all the daylight views, because New England chips were required to have that. But this sprawls out all over the place in kind of a weird, it's like a spider getting stepped on. It kind of squish a little bit. And it's not the first time you've seen that. But when we look at this, the historic piece has some elegance to it. It is hard to program, I'll be honest, that lower level. We know there's water issues there. It's got a slate roof. It leaks like a sieve on certain rainstorms. There probably is some water pressure in the soil that's driving water through the slab, because we hear some of the classrooms at the lower level are flooding. That's typically not from above, that's usually from below, or sidewalks partially buried. But as we look at this, if you take the entirety of the block in the back that was added on over many years, you take that off and reimagine the footprint, you can create something that has some symmetry, that respects the original architecture, but compressed with that footprint, maintains the courtyard, and starts to provide some of the types of spaces that we would like to see. This site is the biggest of the sites, so it's a little easier to make drop-off, circulation work, those types of things. And as we look at the upper right-hand plan, the main entry, trying to backfill spaces within the existing building and dealing with those floor-to-floor changes in the stairs, it compromises what we can do, honestly, a little bit. But we still, when we look at the gym, the platform, the cafeteria, so that platform can both open to the gym or the cafeteria, depending on the need for assembly or other type of event. We pair grades. In this case, it's 4th and 3rd, 1st and 2nd, but you could do whatever you wish. These tend to be 3-track schools. with flexible classrooms. We're providing at least 1 or 2 flex classrooms in each of these schemes, all of them. So if you have more students going through, like your second graders now, you have the ability to, instead of pack more into a classroom, you have that other space to teach into. On the lower level, some of that flex classroom space is in support service, the media center. That will take some real study to make this work. It's super complicated because of the accessibility issues between the buildings. Not impossible, but just takes some thought. Again, the existing building fronts the street beautifully. There's no need to change that. I just wish you entered at a level and not in between. What you add onto the back could be single-story, multi-story. There's options that we could look at, but there's definitely site capacity to do something interesting here. What we presented before, we've updated these, moved some program pieces around, updated the costs. I'll go through costs in a little bit of discussion of how we're presenting costs now, because that's, there were a lot of questions Monday night about that, and I can imagine there'd be a lot of questions about cost. When we looked at the before, these are 3 new schools on the existing sites. So you have to knock a school down to build something new. So any of the renovation addition or these 3 new require what we call swing space, because you have to move the children somewhere, because they can't be in the school when you're renovating. It's not really conducive to great learning, and they're not big enough to do that. There'd be a lot of surfaces that couldn't be supported. So each of these are on existing sites. So swing space we had solved before, that's a more complicated problem now. And I will say, some of the questions, I'll just hit them off right now. So when we look at land acquisition, if you were to look at a unified school and purchase some land, that is reimbursable at the 65%, 61 plus 4. Swing space, also reimbursable. Now, RIDE doesn't want us to spend $10 million on swing space. They get real picky about what we do because it's temporary, but they do reimburse for that. So both of those are reimbursable expenses. In this case, we looked at sort of model schools, just to sort of apples to apples, and kind of create something that we thought could be achievable on each of the 3 sites. They sit differently on the site, address the road differently, drop-offs a little different, and each have sort of a different specialty space. So Ashaway has CALA as part of that. That's the yellow box on the corner, lower left-hand corner. Again, same kind of features, gym, cafeteria, media center, all those things in sort of a public side, nurse included. And then the classroom bar, which 2 stories, which you could lock down during the day or after hour events, those kinds of things. The pink space or purple color, standard learning as well. Second floor, again, more classrooms, third, fourth, second, third, fourth here. Again, as we look at Charlestown, we purposely made these all look the same, just to, they wouldn't be designed like this, but for a stage 2 effort, it just gives you the ability to say cost, what there are cost differences between each of the sites, because there are idiosyncrasies. The drop-offs works really well here. This footprint actually takes the existing footprint and fits within it. It's just a 2-story scheme versus sort of the 1-story sprawl that you have now. In this case, we have the inclusive classrooms that are here, so 3 of those spaces, those are larger, those are 1,000 square feet. I should have mentioned CALA has a separate entry. These spaces have the ability to have that if you wish, the ability to bring an ambulance up to it if it's somebody who's profound and you need that. All those things have to be considered. Second floor, very similar. Just a different color. As we look at Richmond, again, the biggest footprint, so this the same footprint that the other 2 schemes had fits here very well. We actually, where the historic building is, we want to build behind that. We want a little bit more front yard here, because that gives you better parking, better drop off, all those things get a little easier. We also have to fit things like leach fields and those types of non-fun things, but they have to be there. This gets the pre-K classrooms, so 6 of those. So 6 out of 10,000 square feet. Each of those classrooms has an individual restroom.
No, this is from last time.
This is from last time, it's just an example.
Okay, a
So
couple things got.
each one of these things, you can decide callus wherever you want it to be, it's just, they can't,
Just double check.
you can't get them at the same site, right? So you have to have,
Right.
Cala has to be here, inclusive has to be here, pre-K has to be there. You can't put two Z on one site. So, a little bit about RIDE funding guidelines. I'll go through kind of a cost analysis that we've developed. We are showing construction cost, right? So that's what it would take for a contractor to build the bricks and mortar and have it operational, right? Open the doors and it's open. That doesn't include what we call soft costs, which RIDE covers as well. They reimburse for soft costs. Typically, construction is about 80% of a total project cost. Now, it gets a little wonky because land acquisition is not part of that. That's additional. If you have some remediation, like some soil issues, up to $1 million on top of that is also reimbursable. The swing space is also reimbursable, but it's not part of that 80-20 percentage. So it's dependent on opportunity. So I won't give you what the average that Holly and I use, but there is a sort of rule of thumb average that we've kind of developed. So within the 20% of RIDE eligible funding, which they can reimburse for, that's 61 plus 4, professional services, that's architectural, engineering, OPM, testing services, you gotta test the soil for the condition of it, the bearing capacity, whether it's environmentally sound, all those things have to happen. Other related project costs, and this is a little different, RIDE used to lump that into the 20%, they've gotten much kinder to us. And $2,100 per student for FF&E, so that's furniture, fixtures, and equipment. So if you were to take the building, the plans I showed you, turn it upside down, shake it, whatever fell out is within that bucket. So based on the student population, we get to design for $2,100 per student for that kind of stuff. On top of that, there's $3,000 per student for technology, you know, screens.
Does that go into like the wiring and like the infrastructure and stuff? Because I know that.
Security's part of that, there's a whole bunch of things that.
Yeah, because when you think technology, I think like when you're saying that, I think people think, oh, okay, nice computers, nice that, but really just getting into the meat and potatoes of
It
the
does,
actual.
yeah, yeah. Sort of any camera system you have, if you choose to do that, where you have that, all that kind of.
Not the
thing.
infrastructure, but the equipment,
The
the
equipment.
cameras.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Equipment, not the wires in the building.
Well, sometimes the wire, so.
Yeah, but
Depending on the, like the
if
badge.
it's like
right there.
if the Wi-Fi ban and all of that, that's, yeah.
Yeah. So that's nice, right? So you have that extra pool of dollars to lump into the overall. So, yeah, what we're trying to do is just create, here are the three options that we've been asked to study, to keep it apples to apples, because the soft cost would be different for each one of them, depending on what you choose. It's very complex. We decided to keep it as construction dollars to give you a relative number. And you would imagine you could add a soft cost 20, 23% or so on top of that, and you get generally a rough overall, very rough, don't quote me, overall project cost. That's something, we have to provide that in stage 2, so whatever option is chosen, we have to develop that by February. That will be known. So when we look at the three options in aggregate, right? Again, option 1 is a unified school. Think of it as 2 schools on one site connected by something, a gym, multiple cafeterias, whatever it is. That's in a range of 87.4 to 89.3 million. Construction, just bricks and mortar. And why we have a range is the last couple of years, RIDE has been awesome, right? The state has ponied up, because of escalation, additional dollars each September. We're into October, so we haven't heard it yet. 2 years ago, they added like $15 per square foot, which doesn't sound like a lot, but at these schools, that you know, if you took a unified school at 130,000 square feet, that's a lot of money that gets added in. They didn't do it last year. We think they're going to do it this year, because escalation ran rampant last year, so they got to catch up a little bit. So that's that range. That's why you see 2 numbers. Option 2, addition renovations. There is some benefit to the small, but some benefit to the structure, the slab that might be here, the roof we're gonna have to replace, the walls we have to blow out. Yes?
With the renovations, would that get into plumbing and all of that
All that
as
has to be
well?
gone.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm just saying, I just know what the plumbing issues
It's
have
awful.
been here,
Yeah.
it's terrible, so
It's awful.
just thinking of
Yeah. So when we
mold,
say
it will be like HVAC systems, all of that,
everything is
with the
new.
renovation?
Yeah,
Okay.
so the only thing that would remain is what I didn't knock down.
Thank you.
So even when you think about it, because of new energy codes, I have to knock the skin of that brick on the
Yeah.
outside or stucco or whatever, it comes off. All the windows come out, everything comes out. I take it down the structural frame and build it back.
Okay.
Because the frame is the frame, right?
Yeah.
As long as we can work with it. You might have to update the frame for seismic conditions, which is a whole other nightmare, but that's, and the problem I'll say with all of the existing renovations to do is we don't know what we don't know.
I was gonna say, what if you take out a window and then you find much more, like, say renovations is on there,
Yeah.
and that, whatever, $1 million, and now it skyrockets, because now you realize, okay, guess what, we've gotta tear, like, there's no repair to this.
Yeah.
I came from Hurricane Katrina land,
Oh, yeah.
and a lot of people discovered once they got down to the studs, not just mold, but many other things. So then
Yeah,
what
like-
happens in that case?
The
So-
TTE roof is a good example for us, like we had to redo that roof, this past summer, and, you know, they found asbestos, so we had to do some abatement, and when you have.
So
a
those
roof,
unexpected costs, like how does that,
So I budgeted in this, working with Holly, all those walls are gone. I've assumed they're horrible, right? I know they're horrible.
Yeah.
So, and we have to, there's a lot of technical things I could get into, and I'd love to get into discourse about dew point and what happens through humidity through a wall. But to guarantee that that doesn't happen, I gotta take it all out. And insulation has to be on the right side, you have to have an air barrier. Buildings have to breathe, they need to dry. And when you get masonry bearing walls like this, it used to be great, but they weren't air conditioned buildings. Now when you're putting cold air in the building, you have moisture wicking through the wall, it turns to water at some point through that wall, and there's no place for it to go. So that's where all those problems happen.
When this will be a reality, would everyone, how long to have seen building this thing?
I want to be clear that right now, any of these options, based on when all this timeline happens, is about 2029 when the doors open.
is there money, I guess my question is there a thing if that happens?
So the way costing happens in stage two, right, Holly does a really good job with Colliers, keeping both the architect honest and y'all honest.
Yeah.
So there are contingencies that are carried, right? They tend to be at this stage 15% on the design and construction side, which is a lot of money.
Yeah.
And if you go see him at risk with his construction manager, which a lot of these projects do because of schedule, that's a whole different lecture I could give up. That usually carries they carry a 3% contingency for unforeseen conditions. That wall they opened up, or the slab is cracked underneath there, there's water pouring through, all that kind of thing.
When we exceed, say that, the hypothetical 3%.
It's a problem.
It's a problem.
Yeah, so what if we get, but what happens, I guess, in the event, I just curious, like at what point, like,
Some of that stuff, we don't often do it in stage two, but in stage two, we do a lot of destructive testing. So when we have a contractor on board, whoever that might be, they come in and they'll take a whole ceiling down. They'll start to drill a hole in the floor. They'll start to do things because we, the architect,
yeah.
want to be sure that the cost is covered in our documentation. Because if it gets more expensive, I gotta take something away.
I'm just saying, like, old buildings. Because I just think old buildings have hidden secrets.
They do. Some good, mostly not.
But that's
How
really
do you pick a
changing.
plan?
So, but we've been doing this for 6 years.
Right.
So we just been spending money on looking at plans.
So you just can't do that before?
No, this is legislated. The way this process works is legislated.
I think what it is I think that it
Oh,
really
yeah.
does make a difference. I think there is that, that element of people want to keep the school here. There's a lot of history here. You know, I get that piece. But then it's also really scary to tear down a building and put it up. But then in that breath, like, we all know it's an old building. I mean, if you're in the building, you can smell the mold in here, whatever. That's not a secret.
Well, why are our kids in it then?
That's a different story. But anyways, but as you get into these walls and you're getting into it and there's more hidden things that you're finding,
So-
that can be that, and then I get the risk piece because what I do all day, but general public may not understand that that risk
So,
is calculated into that
yeah,
final
yeah.
amount.
Hold on, let me answer before. So, in stage 2, we have to hire consultants that are environmental consultants, right? They're gonna test everything for all the sort of asbestos PCBs and sort of, window caulking used to have PCBs in it, and it quickly leach down the building and get into the soil, so then you have to test the soil, there's all sorts of things. All that happens in stage 2 to develop an environmental report. Whether you demo the building completely or partially demo it, renovate it, you have to address that.
Yeah.
So we know a lot of that up front. And part of what we're doing is, I'm not keeping anything here. There's no wall worth saving, right? So it goes down to basically a steel frame. And I know when I see a steel frame, I know it's good, right? I may have to have a little bit more bracing to it in places, but
But then I think letting the public know that piece makes a huge difference on renovation or new construction.
Yeah.
If you're not keeping anything but the steel frame and like the skeleton, what's the point then of renovating if you can just do new construction?
right, that's
That's what I said earlier, because that was, feedback that we received.
But I don't think that's communicated that if a renovation happens, there's not much say. I don't think general public knows that.
No.
I think that they think we're just adding on, like you have your house and you add on a bit, like you're adding on another new room. I think that's the perception of what the renovation is. Babysitters and stuff are hard to get for people to come in.
I think
We're gonna
now
actually
this-
have one more Zoom meeting.
We're gonna
and
do a
then we'll
virtual
work on it.
meeting, so-
But I think that piece of it does really change an opinion of public to know, you're just going down to the skeleton, you're not keeping walls, you're not keeping anything. That sentimental piece
No?
that people are holding on to in the community
You're
is gone
gutting it,
anyways.
you're not renovating it, you're gutting it.
And I
Please
think,
help us to spread that word. I mean, we try, this is year 6 that we're trying, and
but
So we haven't heard that.
this is the first time.
so last time we didn't do renovations and additions because we said, and I get it, sometimes we get to certain pieces, but the last time we did this application, RIDE said, if you wanna renovate, it's gonna be very like new, you have to go down to the studs, and the school committee said, then why even bother? And then the public said, well, I wanna know, that's why I didn't vote this time. So every time we do this, somebody has a reason why they don't wanna vote, and I get it, but the reasons keep changing, and we just keep spending money.
But if renovations wasn't an option on the last, it was new construction. or-
I just explained why, because
Yeah.
RIDE said exactly
Yeah,
what.
yeah, which is fine, but I think, but really, you're still building new construction, it's just one floor plan versus another. Is essentially.
So remember, this is, like, even, Stan may not even be your architect.
No, I know that, but for the community, it may be one versus the other.
But that's, again, just remember, this is a little different, because now the school committee is deciding. They're making a decision for stage 2. And then we have until November 2026 to work on the planning around what that looks like.
Okay.
Well, I mean, like, the vote of the community. The vote of the community happens in November 2026, because what we recognized was people want a lot of time to be planning their stage, their community around a stage 3. If that happens after we all figure out where we want to begin to submit the stage 2.
Yeah, so we were asked to take a look at renovation and additions and an apples-to-apples basis, right? Against what we did before and against it now we're unified, just to sort of see. And just to finish the thought, and then I'll take that question. When we look at the new construction, we have escalated it forward. There has been some escalation in the last 2 years, unfortunately. Things have stabilized a little bit. We're starting to see a little bit better bid climate. We'll see how long that holds. South Kingstown's benefiting from that right now. Middletown's benefiting from it, Warwick is benefiting from it. So if you were bidding right now, I'd be very happy. But bidding 2 years from now, you never know. But it's a little bit more predictable than coming out of COVID was just ridiculous. We saw 10 to 20% spikes. There were some weird things going on with industry where they would hoard stuff and not ship it, and it just drove costs up. One thing we do know that's interesting, in Rhode Island, the labor market is continuing to change, right? So brick has been predominantly the wonderful material for schools for the last 100 years plus. You get brick here, that's still great. It's just everything inside of it's not. But the amount of basins that are still in the state has come way down. So getting quality craftsmanship that you used to get is much, much harder. So we as a community, with our builder partners, have had to look at different opportunities and different construction methodologies to meet the needs. So it's unfortunately, it's very complex. I like it, it's interesting, it's what I do, but we're trying to build cost models that you can rely on, that whatever architect you choose in stage 3, I will tell you as an architect that has done stage 2s and stage 3s for communities, but also picked up horrible stage 2s that were crap. And we've had to go back to the community and say, you can't build this. You have to do something different. Your ed specs change. Your whole district has changed with RIDE's help, right? We don't want to get in that position. So we're trying to do due diligence now to give you a really good plan, whichever option you choose, that's realistic and you can move forward with. Sorry, you had a question?
No, I'm good now.
Okay.
And it maybe a stupid question, at the school committee, when you presented this, you had mentioned something along the lines that option 2 is the trickiest, the most difficult to appease ride. Is there the potential that the 61 to 65%, if you don't appease their needs, that they only partially reimburse?
No, I think we've got a great relationship, and a lot of the architects in the community that work in Rhode Island have, and they just want to be partners and they're brought in, right? And you don't want to surprise them with anything, so if something comes up, you daylight it with them, you have a meeting, and they're there to help all of us get through it together. Because they don't want to get to that point where they're saying no or something.
Okay, thank you.
How do you guarantee it's gonna be 1,281 students in 2031 when a lot of them are going to charter schools?
So we have to design to the NASDAQ numbers. Don't confuse that with what you actually would have in your building in the end. The NASDAQ numbers allow us to get the most amount of money. That's the important part here. This is about the most amount of reimbursable dollars you can get. So we want that number to be as high as we can get it, that NASDAQ allows. You may only have 1,100 students there. You may have 300 kids that are homeschooled that we don't know about, right? So there's all sorts of things that factor into that. But this is stage 2. This isn't stage 3 yet. So this is about dealing with the state and you and kind of figuring out what option you want to go with and how the funding model works to maximize your benefit. Yes.
2 questions. I know they said that swing space is reimbursable. Is the transportation associated with swing space? No, okay, that's important.
How much percentage on reimbursement?
So 61 plus 4. So everything's at that. If it's eligible, you get that.
I just want to make sure everything is 61.4.
Yeah. And second question, on the either renovate to new or 3 new on the existing sites, does that mean new wells and septic?
Yes.
The difference between 3 separate elementary schools versus 1 unified school. If you put all the students in 1 unified school, you get approximately $5,100 per student towards furniture, fixtures, equipment, and technology.
Yes.
Do you think you get more bang for your buck on 1 big school with $6.5 million going towards that versus each individual elementary, assuming the population is exactly the same at roughly 2.2 million?
Right. So what I can say is it's your decision, but from just the factual as an architect, taking all the emotion out of it, building a singular or 2 schools on one site, however connected, building on one site is less expensive and gives you more flexibility than 3 sites. That's just the nature of it. Now, it doesn't take into account busing, it doesn't take into account any of that. As an architect, bricks and mortar, what I can talk about, there is efficiency there. That may not be right for you, but there is efficiency.
I understand there's efficiency. I want to know on this particular, the wiring,
You figure if you're only going into one building, there'd be less cost, there's gonna be less cost, there's gonna be less space, such as like a cafeteria, there's gonna say there's 2 cafeterias.
Right.
Versus 4, I think that you would be getting more bang for your buck as far as like the technology piece goes
Sure.
and how it's just infrastructure, just
Yeah.
like how
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
being ran through. You have 1 server versus 3 servers, you have 1.
Your heating plant's more,
Yeah.
it's different, right? Here's another thing, you have less doors. Doors equal security breaches, your security protocols are easier. Again, I come from Connecticut, so we deal with this a little differently than most states, right? But it's something that near and dear to us as we look at ways to still make schools welcoming and inviting to the community, but to make sure that we protect.
I'm just really on that,
Yeah.
one school versus 3 schools, how would that affect, how would staffing? Staffing.
That would be Gina to answer, and professional staff. I can't answer that. About staffing, if you went to a unified school versus 3 separate schools, the impact.
Staffing is a contractual, we can't change staffing unless the contract. So it would be based on their class, size and contract.
So that would be everything like same number of assistant principals, same number. You would
Well,
have,
it may not be that title, but you have to make sure, like, for example, like, special ed directors are required, and you have to make sure, like, now they're moving towards more of a pre-K childhood, so there's you may not say the title of principal, but you may have the director of early childhood versus the principal of elementary.
she wasn't talking about class size, but overall number of employees, or uniform, versus.
Well, you saw the number of kids, so typically a lot of our staff is going to have the number of kids. That's not going to change unless you're thinking of things like, custodians, it's a great question, right?
So general overall, one would be maybe one building. Still need staff.
We'd have more efficiency, we'd have more efficiency, right? So we do that by square footage. Right now, we might have one. So, yeah, we would do, just like you see in the budget, like the staffing analysis, so we think about it, we can't just go over something, we would just have, excuse me? It's really hard because this is not like a community or a conversation, we're just trying to make sure we have the presentation, I promise, but we have one question, so the question was regarding staffing. So the staffing is contractual, so, we always say based on, but I can't say how many dollars I need, because that's based on pay slips. That number changes, but yes, every time we do that, I have vacancies all the time, I have never had to, put anybody up to a layoff, in one district in the state that hasn't had any layoffs, because we forecast out 5-10 years so that we really think about that attrition. So, the goal is, do you need 3 nurses? You may, depending on the health need, I need to look at the health plans, that's contingent upon need, not number.
So just ballpark, if you're the unified school versus regular schools, what's the including the land acquisition?
I can't include the land acquisition because that's based on market value, right? So I have no idea. You might buy 100 acres because you want it and get a great deal, you might buy 30 acres. All I can do is tell you construction dollars between, we'll use the high side just to keep simple numbers. Just say it's I'm rounding up, 90 million on option 1, which is unified, and it's about 105 million. So there's a $15 million delta in our analysis right now. I'm going with 3 schools because 3 kitchens, 3 gyms, 3 heating plants, all those things get times 3.
Is that including, so the breakdown that Craig was talking about earlier with the 55
So each, no matter what you choose, you get that.
But it's not in that number.
It's not in that number, that's in the soft cost number. So that would be added on top of that. That you get, yes.
So I guess this is a question for you, Mark, and the superintendent, and maybe Mr. Simon. So when you talk about one building equals more efficiencies, can you give us some concrete examples of how you define what you vision as increased efficiencies?
Yeah. I can give you a living example that we are living together in Johnston right now with the unified school there. We took 4 schools, right, about the same size as your schools and brought them into 1. That's grade 1 through 4, well, there might be a change. We can't talk about yet. But grades 1 through 4, that's 1,000, we designed to 1,100 students. They were lower than that number based on census, but that was the NASDAQ number for that time. We know from the previous superintendent, it was about $2.2 million in bus savings. Now, Johnston's different than you, right? I get that. But just as an example, that was for them, they could develop a more efficient busing system for their students. So, because Johnston has traffic problems, so their students are on the buses for a long period of time because they can't get in and out of the schools. So that was one thing. One kitchen allowed them to adjust. They used to cook at the high school and then ship the food to all the remote schools. Now, in doing a unified school, they cook in that unified school for right there. So the kids get the hot food right there. It's not trucked around in carts to each of the 4 schools that were scattered through the district. The other thing is their special ed services. Their model there were 21 professionals. They're in the middle school, in their office, in a lower level, garden level, basement. They push out to each of the schools. So they were in their cars all day long trying to get to students. Now they don't have them. They're going to one spot, which is centrally located to the middle school where their office is. So those are 3 things. There are many, many, many more things we can talk about, but those were concrete things that were interesting that had nothing to do with the architecture, but had everything to do with policy within the district.
For the Richmond renovations, is the reason you want to save that front part purely historical, sentimental, it looks nice, people like it, or were there other reasons?
I tried to save something, to be apples to apples. I mean, y'all could decide, Mark, just get rid of it. But then it's a new school on that site, right? So I tried to be fair, and what I was asked to do was apples to apples. Now, in the end, if that option is chosen, and we get deeper dives into that, we may find some other things, right, as we look at that,
I think that's a school especially fun.
other things.
But I think everyone thinks that about their school because they've been in that school. I do just want to stress personally, you know, as a parent and a school committee member, I've been involved in this conversation for many years, and every year it gets more and more urgent and never less complex. I understand that it's difficult to think about these complexities and the unknowns, but it's really what I try to do when we consider these. One thing I wanted to talk about was the buses. I know that it was mentioned, you know, kids already go across the district, but we do already have the bus routes for the middle school and high school, which I don't believe any of them are over an hour. It's June one?
Not right now.
Oh. I don't believe any of those are over an hour.
No, and I don't know if you realize that we already have students who are at Charlestown, who live in Charlestown, who come to Charlestown, who are on the bus for 45 to 60 minutes. We do that now.
Yeah. And I, you know, my
Again,
kids
we're
had,
128 miles.
my kids had, I had one kid that is the last one on to go to school, and I have another kid that's the first one on. So the older one has a shorter ride. But I think that if we look at the bus routes that we already have and adjust them to account for the fact that, you know, we won't have high school seniors riding, we can increase the number, we can kind of get an estimate of what the bus ride would be like to a unified school.
And there's states looking at transportation, they have consultants in already looking at the northern unit, because that's where, like Mark said, there's a lot of congestion, and they're trying to remove dollars. For example, you know, we know that Montgomery Public Schools has, you know, millions more kids than we do, and they are doing $20 million less on transportation than Rhode Island. So they're looking at statewide efficiencies, they're looking at local-wide efficiencies, Virginia is working with Ocean State, where the state is doing a free audit of routes to make sure to remember, they're vendors. So these numbers are gonna change based on efficiencies, because there's a lot of multiple layers happening in the General Assembly, now to be able to mitigate costs like that, so they're more efficient.
How do you figure out how many cars, like you figure out parking for staff, but then like how do you figure out how many cars will be dropping off kids? Like preschool needs more drop off.
Yeah, so in stage 2, there's typically a traffic study that we do, where we actually sit there and count cars. I don't, but we hire somebody to do that.
Literally. And then I just have one, my biggest thing with this that's different this time that we didn't have last time, aside from options, like I think that the time was really condensed last time and there was the one option based on the bonus reimbursements that we had one last shot at. But so this time, in the first conversation, 2021, not first, but the first one I was involved in, there was talk of bringing 5th grade back. That was something I was interested in. Now that I have a son that's gone to the middle school, I'm less concerned about it, to be honest, that's just personally. But I don't like it with the unified school idea. I think now you're talking about making a pre-K through 5 school, which is literally about 50 idea of having it be split into multiple buildings on the same property. But I need to know, there's a lot more I wanna know about that, especially because what I was told before too, was that the space at the middle school would be vacant essentially. So would a plan for the space at the middle school to become more of a CTE area or a benefit to the middle school have to be part of stage 2? And would any funding for that be part of this process? Would we have to put money aside to work on that renovation? That's my biggest concern at the moment, is this talk about 5th grade moving, and what that would implicate further for what we need to do.
Mark, am I correct in, the 3 new schools are not designed to include a 5th grade or the unified could, the way it's.
It doesn't have.
Doesn't have it,
Correct.
the way it's designed, this has got the second floor, you could add a 5th.
Correct, yeah, so the unified school is easier to add a 5th, and separate it out into, say, multiple schools on a site, right? I wouldn't want to talk about it as multiple buildings, because you would lose all benefit of that. Code-wise, there's also reasons. We want to connect it from an infrastructure point of view, so the physical plant would share amongst the discrete components. The 3 new, to be fair, you could add 5th grade, but you're adding a 3rd floor. And that's out of character with your town, right? Now you're talking about taller buildings, those type of things. You could not in the renovate to do. It's just not in the plan.
Sorry, one more thing, just related to that. Would you then, you'd have to then increase the cost? Say if
Correct.
if unified school, the cost would have to increase for the formula and for the square footage and for
Right.
everything.
You'd get the 5th, if you were putting the 5th grade, you'd get the same dollars for each 5th grader, so it would automatically go up because you're increasing the population of students.
Is that something we can get a more specific ballpark for the October school committee meeting?
To run the number with 5th grade?
Yeah.
Sure. That's easy.
What is she asking? Holly, what are you agreeing to?
I got you.
It's good, we're good. I'm good.
Thanks, Greg.
Next, in a couple of weeks, 12 people are gonna vote which direction we're gonna go. Okay? And there's 5 of them here. And we would love to hear from everybody which one you would like, and the reason why you like it. I mean, because I'm not gonna see you again before we probably vote on this.
I'll tell you,
Okay?
I'm a reading specialist in this building. As much as the unified school sounds wonderful for many reasons, I like the idea of the new construction, because one, you're not cutting everything down to the bare bones, like getting new stuff. Also, I like the idea of a community school. I feel like I know, with the exception of preschool because it's new this year, I can tell you I know almost every single family in this building, because this is my 18th year that I'm starting. I love seeing families come back again and again, and the kids that used to be here coming back with their younger siblings. And I wouldn't have that same kind of relationship necessarily in the new construction school, with the unified school, because it'd be so large. I don't know if I would have that same family.
You had a question?
So to your, I've worked at a school before that had that same layout of like fingers, I don't know what you called it, and we were K through 6,
Yeah.
where I'm in Mississippi, and we had that, we had 6 grades per grade, and it flowed beautifully. The way that you just orchestrate your day, you never run into anyone. I mean, so like really as a number standpoint, and like that nervousness of having that many bodies say if it went to fit, with systems in place, it runs beautifully. And it doesn't feel like that. We had one gym, we had one cafeteria, we had 6 grades in each grade level, like 6 classes within each grade level from K to 6. And it just was beautiful. I agree, I kind of like the small community idea. I do think that some pieces are lost having a unified, however, I do think that for the kids' standpoint, I think that the downfall of having a community is they're stuck with the same 30 kids, K through 4th grade, and they never get that opportunity to make new friends, to get out of situations in a classroom with maybe certain individuals. If you only have 2 classes, it's heads or tails.
Right.
Which one are you going to? I think that's the pro to having a unified. I think it is more effective having been at a school that was quite large in the past. You do lose that intimate relationship with the students and stuff, but sometimes it's kind of worth that to kind of have other, there's more pros.
I feel like the community has already voted on the 3 new schools, and the community decided that that was not the best option. I'm grateful that you have put this presentation together with the 3 options, because I was one person that was thinking like the addition, renovating the old, there was never an actual like cost associated with it. I'm a physical therapist, and I have worked in schools before. The school that I worked in was Putnam, Connecticut, and they did have like a regional elementary, middle school. The elementary and middle school was combined, but elementary had a separate wing, and middle school had their separate wing, and they were kind of combined by the cafeteria. But, and when this option was presented in 2021, I was very nervous because I felt like I really wanted the small community school. And my oldest son was going into kindergarten, so this was really scary for me. It does seem like the unified option is probably the best option to move forward with, in my opinion, because it seems like there's going to be a big cost savings. And also I noticed with my oldest, who's now in 6th grade, so he's now in a big school with kids from all 3 towns, and also I graduated from Charlestown. So what I noticed is that each town tends to stick with their own town, even when you go to middle school right now. That's what happened when I went through Charlestown, and it's still happening now. And Charlestown does tend to be very, very cliquey.
My son went there.
I think it would be nice for them to be introduced to all the kids right from the get-go.
Yeah, still have a question here, and my question is on the swing site. So if option 2 or 3 is chosen, would there be one swing site for all 3 schools, or that's still to be determined?
To be determined.
So there's no suitable site yet known?
No.
So, okay.
What's also tied to this program is we have to have all of the work done within 5 years.
Mhm.
So you can't do one school at a time, because you would just run out of
Oh,
calendar.
so the timeline to 2031
Is done, everything.
is everything. So there would be simultaneous construction at
Yes.
all these schools?
So you typically would, based on what we looked at last time, you'd have 2 schools at once, and then the third, or you do 1 school and then you do the 2 schools, but you'd have to do at least 2 schools at the same time.
It seems like a challenging aspect.
Well, it's doable.
Yeah.
It's doable. We had to build the.
Yeah, thank you. Yes.
I'm going to say that I'm not tied to any one of these options yet. I'm here because I'm trying to hear what everybody else is thinking, but to reiterate what she just said, there's a very vocal group of taxpayers in Richmond who do not want 3 new schools. They made that loud and clear. And so I'm afraid if that's the option, then we go to a vote, and that's just going to happen again, and then we're going through this and spending however hundreds of thousands of dollars we do every time we have to make these. As for option 2, it scares me the most. I've done home renovations. I wasn't even in Katrina, but just in my home. My first home was asbestos abatement, and it was a nightmare. So I can only imagine Richmond Elementary School, 90 years old, what on earth we would find there. Exactly, and that risk is what's going to be upping the price. So, I feel like that's my least favorite option. So now I'm stuck between 1 and 3. And when I think about 3, even if it sounds like it's a great idea, I still live in the town of Richmond where that very vocal group of residents fought against it. And that worries me because we need to do something. And I think whatever the school committee decides.
Schools no matter what. And
Exactly.
that, like, by stating that no matter what, you're getting new structures. Whether it's a brand new school or the renovation, you're going down to stud, you're still getting a
Yeah.
new structure, or one. Because I think that the mindset is it's going to be exactly like it is now.
Well, and we can't just we just can't keep fixing things. It's just, it's not wise. It's, yeah.
If you look, it's not that different, right? So the construction numbers you're looking at, you have to remember, there's another 20% on top of that, plus the other costs. So just swing space alone is very expensive. And so you're investing in something that you don't use after 5 years.
From a taxpayer's perspective, I think what we're currently paying to schools is unsustainable. I think many of us feel that way. So if a unified school will bring some tax savings because of the efficiencies, mechanically, all the efficiencies, one high-lab, whatever, one principal, you know, can maximize the school class sizes, max them out, make those reduce. I don't have to say very good job, but it might be able to reduce some of the staffing, some of the support staff, while they're saying for taxpayers. It's unsustainable. If we do that, maybe we can offer more services towards that school. But I think as it is right now, 3 schools, the way what we're paying currently is just totally unsustainable. So going forward, I would vote for it.
At what point would the, if option 1 is a thought and the school committee approves option 1, when is when is it determined where the site will be? And because that might, some people who may vote on it, that will hinge on that.
Yeah, so I think the site discussion has to happen during stage 2, right? So say October 21st, something, it's voted on it, and that's accepted to move forward with. October 22nd, we gotta start working on it. RIDE expects us to have at least a thoughtful position on where that's going to be. You can't just say it's a player to be played. They won't accept that. So there is a certain level of commitment. Holly spoke to, I think, Mario today, whether it's the PNS or a commitment letter or whatever it is, there's some legal things, but we need to know the site because we have to do testing on that site. We have to do some things that are in stage 2 that are requirements for us, environmentally, structurally. You know, we need to know the bearing capacity of the soil. We need to know if there's ledge, you know, where the footprint of the building might go, things like that.
Is there any solar component incorporated in this plan?
So that-
in order to help offset the
So that's up to you. That RIDE won't necessarily reimburse it on the solar side of things, and each community can only enter a contract, the way I understand it, based on their regulations within their community. So we dealt with this at Newport and South Kingstown, and we've prepared the buildings for it, so the roof is structured for it. There's sort of a pathway from the roof to the electrical room, but we can't provide it in the base building. But we provide the ability for you to add it, if you can come to an agreement and sign a contract with the vendor and stuff.
So as a parent and also as somebody who works in this building, I feel like I came from a very small community, and when I was going into preschool or kindergarten, my classrooms were this small with my entire town, so this school feels normal for me for an elementary school size. And I don't think that, you know, you can think about the saving of the money, you can think about the taxpayer dollars, but when it comes to a kindergartner having anxiety about going into a building that big, it just feels like that should trump the cost.
Yeah, I think the way to think about it is a kindergartner wouldn't appear like they're going into a building that big, right? That's up to your team of professionals and architects, even in stage 2, to sort out that, right? We would want to make sure alleviate that problem. So whether it's always a separate entry no matter what, but it would be very playful. The pre-K through first grade, say, are very different building, different experiences for students than second, third, and on. So we would want to address that in stage 2, whichever is chosen. We will have to have, RIDE requires us to have more community meetings. So you're
I
gonna
just
have
wanna
more.
put it out there that
Yep.
I personally think that building 3 new schools would probably suit an elementary school need as far as the developmental needs of the child.
So one thing I should clarify, when RIDE says the regulation of 900 square feet per classroom, that doesn't mean you're putting 38 kids in a classroom. That means the furniture is different now. Table and chairs are gone. I can't even fit those things anymore, but I couldn't fit them when I was in elementary school. You know, the ones with the desks that are attached to it? It's different now. Furniture is very different. It's a very deliberate design proposition that you get together and you talk about how you want to do different things within your classroom and gather your students in different areas for different activities. You need space to do that. It's not about the population in the room. It's about the space to be able to do that. Yes, sorry.
Sure. I'm from Richmond Town Councilor, so I'm looking at it from a perspective of somebody who's going to inherit one of these buildings if we do the unified school. We know that those buildings are going to go back to the towns, and we get to have a choice of what we do. And hearing Richmond being called an accessibility nightmare, and I know my community really wants a senior center, it's been one of the things I've been working on. We're gonna be having a choice of what we do, and if we demolish and turn it into a community center, if we find somebody who wants to buy it at whatever cost. So while I appreciate the cost savings here, I'm concerned that it's just going to come out of another pocket, and that I understand it's not the school's problem, but it is still my problem as a taxpayer and as a municipal leader. So, I just think that should be considered as we're thinking about these options. So my preference is option number 2. However, if the school committee chooses option 1, I'll still vote in favor of it.
Well, in reference to what she just said,
Yes.
would you be able to provide the towns with any information on all the investigations you've done in the facilities? So when if we do go with the large building, they could at least move forward.
Yeah, we can provide what we need to produce for stage 2 to RIDE, because we have approved a RIDE that, okay, knocking it down a portion doesn't make sense because of X, Y, Z. We can provide that information. I can't do sort of the above and beyond changes to a commercial function, right, because I'm not contracted for that. But I can provide the information we have, which will give you the windows are bad, the roof is bad, you know, that kind of thing, which are, but.
So if we want to unify, gives us a building that we can actually bring business into, because it has water. Then that may eventually also benefit the taxpayer in the end too.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
I know Cook Valley has water,
Cook Valley, Richmond,
but Ashway's not, right?
No.
I know we're running a little over. I want to respect everybody's time. Any last minute darts to throw out, King?
Provide dinner, right?
Just a reminder that QR codes are on the table. They will also send out a